And you're live.
Good morning. I'm opening up the Audit Committee regular meeting for September 16th, 2024. Members present are Alderman Penderman Charles, James Cardello, Anne Marie Baker, and Anthony Nobilio. Anthony, I'm still going to have to work on that. Did I say it right?
No, you got it right. Thank you.
All right. And soon to join us will be Harry Huntley, who is the newest member of the City Council and was approved by the council for membership at its last Monday meeting.
Great. That's great.
So I will first make a motion to ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Any changes? All in favor of the agenda as published, signify by saying aye.
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 Have it. All right. Next is approval of the minutes from June 17th, 2024, as submitted by Kim. I think those also were sent out to the committee. Did anyone have is there a second? Anthony, you can't second it because
I'll second the minutes.
All right, all right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, the minutes are approved. All right. So we're still working on getting up to full speed. And Jim, I still have not made contact with the person, can't even remember the name. I'm sorry, I took
Okay.
August off and
No. Can I request that you you consider looking at the Audit Committee enabling legislation to move the responsibility of staffing to the constituent constituent services office of the mayor, who does handle staffing for other Bs and Cs. Somehow the enabling legislation or the Audit Committee makes this fall through the cracks that that office is not responsible for staffing this commission or board, whatever you call this.
I think that's an excellent idea too.
We've run into this on various issues where this committee, it's not a standing committee, it's not a an all volunteer committee, it's some sort of hybrid that seems to create gaps in service in terms of how it's served by the office of the mayor.
Writing that down.
Thank you.
And I think it's an excellent idea, long overdue. We are an unusual committee, but maybe under new business, I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that were discussed at the Financial Advisory Commission, because I think it's germane and could make it a body that is parallel in construction to this body.
Thank
Good. You. All right. We have Victoria Buckland here to talk about performance measures.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There are still a couple of departments where I'm waiting on information, but for the ones that I have sent you guys the information from FY24 that I had collected from the departments. You'll see that for the most part, you know, there's not a lot of surprises there. I know there are a couple of places where those performance measures maybe aren't quite where we want them to be. And I do think there are a couple of discussions for us to have with those departments moving forward. You know, whether that's around kind of some fare collection information in transit, or looking at how much is being resurfaced and stuff like that in DPW. I know we had some conversations during the budget development process about what's a reasonable expectation. So some of that stuff we'll revisit, but for the moment, I've sent you the link. Take a look, and then for next time, if you have questions in the meantime, please ask them. Otherwise, next time after you've had a chance to look at it, we can have a little bit of a fuller discussion.
So let me take a second to introduce Harry Huntley to you. It looks like he's coming to us from jail somewhere.
I'm actually at my office in DC, and I apologize for being a couple minutes late. I fell asleep on the metro, missed my stop. So, but I made it here just in time. Thank you.
So I'll just do a brief recap. The city manager's office is responsible for managing and updating the performance measures. And Victoria has been doing diligent duties to try to convert what we have now to, it's not even, in some cases, I think it's input measures to at least output measures. God bless you, Anne Marie. And really to outcome measures. And I am a strong proponent of getting this done because I think that it is important to link the strategic plan and the performance measures. I also think that it's important to link the performance measures as are currently in the departments with the implementation measures of the recently adopted Comp Plan 2040. Because there's a lot of measures in that plan that are very much assigned to departments and functions in the city. And I also am hopeful to do something astounding and adopt a mission and vision statement for the city. The last official mission and vision statement I could find was with the 2006 budget binder. There is a mission and vision statement in the 2012 strategic plan, but that was never adopted by the city council. And it does seem to me that we're kind of a headless horseman without a mission and vision statement that then goes on to a strategic statement and then goes on to performance measures, and then hopefully shifts down to performance appraisals for each of the staff. But that way everybody has guiding lights. Victoria, I want to tell you, I had Got Junk come to my house to empty out the basement, and I found it turns out it doesn't have what I want, but it does seem to me that there is a continuum of roles for government, starting with none, and then getting to recognizing, enabling, even funding and so forth, to at the ultimate end making services. So we certainly make public safety here in the city, but it does seem to me that we really need to have some of these rules of the road. It would be very good, I think, for everybody, for the council to have that on their desks so they can look at it when we're having meetings, but also all the other boards and commissions. I think that the staff would appreciate knowing the direction that everybody's heading, not just their organization, but all the other organizations. And in fact, I suspect when we get this fully propagated, to the extent that staff will look at these things, they're going to say, hey, they're doing the same thing over there that I'm doing over here. And they might even say, but they're getting more pay than I'm getting. I wonder what the difference is. So we'll have to deal with that. But in any event, it's just organizing ourselves to do business in I hope, a more effective way. So,
so what you'll see, obviously, in what I emailed, the link is what was for FY24, most of which was the old measures. There were a few departments I'd worked with last time, two of which are actually not in what you have, which is Rec and Parks and Finance. Still collecting some of that stuff, but the others were police and DPW. For this year, the 4 that I'm working with is Harbor Master, OEM, IT, and planning and zoning. And for Harbor Master and OEM in particular, what you'll see is that for FY24, a lot you have essentially a bunch of text because their measures don't very well capture what they do. So that was part of why I had wanted to work with them for this next year. So hopefully we'll end up in a little bit of a better place with them.
So for the edification of the committee members, some new, two actually new, but also if they're like me, they'll be scrambling to do a search, email search on your name to find the link. Can you just have Kim resend to the audit committee the links?
Oh, okay, I literally sent it this morning. So hopefully it's the top thing on your email.
So I see one for transportation and parking, which I don't know whether other
That's one tab.
Yeah, it's
That's
one
the tab.
You've
got multiple tabs
along the bottom. Yep.
Oh, I see. How maladroit am I? Okay, good. Well, did everybody get this in email? Harry, did you get it? You did. Good.
Yep, Vicky got it to me too. Thank you.
All right. Well,
I don't believe I received it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I will get it to you.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so Jim.
Vicky, a request.
Yes.
If in order to assist Alderman Arnett, other members of the city council and the audit committee, when we see this document, is it possible that we're looking at the Q1 column, I suppose, right? So the July, August, September, I guess we're looking at September, the Q1 column. Is it possible to say highlight in yellow those areas where city management feels it's worthy of note, in order to assist the council members to say, oh, these are the concerns, things that are as expected or meeting the criteria are good, and just use some sort of identifier. I'm suggesting yellow, but whatever that will assist. At least it'll assist me and other committee members in evaluating areas of concern.
Yeah. Yep, I absolutely can do that. Anthony, it looks like I sent it to it looks to me like I sent it to you. I used the same email address that was on the invite for today.
Okay, I'm not seeing it as of now, but I'll check junk and all that stuff. I received the other information.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you, just you.
Okay.
And let's see if that works.
Oh, I have it, Kim. It just came through. Or Vicky, I'm sorry. It just came through. Okay, thank you. Got it.
No worries.
So, can I ask you a clarifying question as I'm looking at this? Could you define the distinction between the collection rate and the clearance rate of issued violations? I'm looking on the parking tab.
So, hang on, let me get there. So I will try.
Okay, I could ask Marcus later if that's easier.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm going to do too, is to make sure that I don't misspeak. So the the collection clearance rate of issued violations collected. I am going to need to clarify that with Marcus, but I think it has to do with validation of fines, because sometimes a fine that gets issued doesn't end up being collectible, because the fine itself got waived or something like that. And then you've got, from what's left, what actually got collected. I believe
Hmm.
that's the difference between the two. But I will check that with Marcus.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions on this topic? On risk assessment, fraud and abuse hotline, I have no information on any new requests. I do have counsel from the city attorney to draft an official report on the fraud and abuse request from Mr. Conlon on the Market House, which I have not done, but we'll have to get to. But my sense is that we had a report from the city finance director who acknowledged that there were some things that needed to be brought up to speed, including matching different accounting forms. Jody, you'll have to help me here. There's actual accounting and some other kind of accounting. And there were some payments that were found to be in arrears, but that had all been brought up to speed. And so I would summarize that and bring it back to the committee for your approval so that we can put that on the record. Vicky, Jody, could you help me with the accounting form that the Market House was using versus the accounting that we use, or was it years of cover or period of time?
So they were in arrears on some of the arrangements. The agreement calls for a regular monthly rent, and then it calls for a performance rent, which is any earnings above a certain level. We get a percent of those earnings from both the the owner and the tenants that they have in the place. There's a coffee place, and I don't know if there's still a pizza place there or not. They were keeping up generally with the monthly rent. During COVID, things got rough and we did some rearranging of the pay schedules. And then we did a catch-up payment with them for what was missed during COVID. And as of today, they're all caught up. And the issue was the performance rent. They had never submitted performance rent. And that their financial information is supposed to be supported by an audit report called, I wouldn't even call it an audit report. It's called compilation. And that's just when the auditors put a letter on the top of the statements that they have compiled them, but they're not issuing no opinion on their validity. So in the lease agreement, we've asked them to provide a compilation report. And that's something that's pulled together by an external audit firm, not necessarily any audit opinion on the validity of it. They have not submitted that. They still have not submitted that. At the time this performance rent issue came up, there was very little past performance rent due because they didn't surpass that benchmark of sales. So they did owe us some back funds. They went back and pulled information from their accounting system and calculated the performance rent based on that and got the back performance rent from their tenants and submitted that to us, and we got caught up. I think it was about a year and a half ago, we got everything caught up. This year, the manager there came to my office and brought me everything before the deadline, performance rent and all. So we are caught up as far as the financing is concerned. They're still not having their financial information handled with a compilation report. They're still not submitting that. We're still just getting reports from their accounting system to show here's what our sales number is. So we've talked to that every time he comes in. I've talked to him about that. I haven't seen any compliance with that yet. Although I'm not sure, even if I did get a report, it wouldn't give me any more comfort because there's no audit opinion on the financial data itself. It's just saying they pulled it together in the form of a financial statement and here it is. And it would just be on the owner. It wouldn't be on the tenants. So, I'm not sure what that gives us.
So before I go to Rhonda, who has her hand up, and then Jim, it doesn't sound like we are closed with this issue.
Just that they aren't producing the kind of report we've asked for. As a financial person with some audit background, the compilation doesn't give me any more comfort than what they're giving me. But the report calls for a compilation report. We are not getting that. Based on what they've given us from their accounting system, they have paid their performance rent and they're up to date with their monthly rent.
So they're up to date in terms of payments, but not up to date in terms of reporting requirements.
Yes.
All right. Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. Is there some sort of, I won't use the word retribution, but with non-compliance with the market house? That's number one. Number two, do we have any other cases out there other than the one with the market house? Number three, I didn't know, Mr. Chair, if you wanted to, in 25 words or less, kind of bring Alderman Huntley up to speed on kind of the background of what this matter, or why we have this fraud and abuse waste hotline.
Right. So, Rhonda, you know me, 25 words or less. Let me go to Jim's question and then we'll circle back to that because I have some of my own.
Thank you. Two questions. First is actually a piggyback on Alderwoman Charles's question. The total performance rent that was due, what's the total back rent that they paid? And was there any late fee or interest associated with the back rent once it was settled?
I cannot, let's see, the first question was the amount that they paid. I would have to send you the schedule that I've been keeping. The back amount was because in COVID, we lowered the amount of rent.
Mm-hmm.
And then we calculated what was not paid and then spread it over. After the emergency was over, we spread it over like 18 months, 2 years, and they've caught up. We spread that over evenly over 24 months, I think. They've caught up with that. And
is it 4 figures, 5 figures, 6? I'm just looking for a ballpark on.
You mean on the back amount or the annual?
Yeah, the back amount, what they satisfied with the performance component that was never paid.
Yeah, I would say I don't think we got to 6 figures.
Okay.
I'm just trying, it was a few years, you add them together, it was more in the tens of thousands, then I don't think it quite got to 100,000.
So that the agreement had no provision for interest or a late payment?
There's no interest assessed on the back due amount.
Okay. And then I know you're getting compiled statements, but could they provide?
I'm not getting compiled statements.
I'm not getting
report, like.
Oh, you're getting a GL report
from, what's it called? The software that.
Yardi.
They're a little software program. They're just giving me printouts of revenue.
Okay. Could it be cross-checked with a tax return?
It could be, except for the tax returns are done on a calendar basis and the agreement is all on fiscal year.
Oh, so there's no way to take quarters, like if you get a quarterly report and say 2
I'd
quarters
have to
from
ask
last
for
year.
quarterly tax returns and then,
No, I
add them up.
meant like
I'm
an
not
annual tax return. Take an annual tax return, say, give me this quarter, this quarter, this quarter, this quarter, and it should equal.
I'd have to
I'm
ask
just looking for alternatives.
No, I know. That's a possibility too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
That does put a lot of burden on our staff who have a billion other things to do. And I'm sure we'll hear in a minute we get the update. A continual shortage of staff for people leaving and waiting for filling vacancies and so forth. And it does, it almost feels like we need to go back and look at the agreements and update them. But here's the thing, and you can blame Rhonda and I and the formerly departed Alderwoman Tierney. It was submitted to the council to update the lease agreement. The current agreement is for 5 years. The council approved recently 2 5-year lease agreements, which means that those are in effect, if I understand it. And I would turn to the city attorney on this. So in terms of any kind of leverage to change the reporting, I'm not sure what our options are. Mr. Attorney, did we not just within the year or so, maybe longer than that ago now, update 2 5-year agreements on the Market House with the current tenants?
Yes, we did. We had a 2021 amendment and a 2022 amendment, and they were really for different things. In the latest one, we basically changed something with respect to alcohol beverage. That was the deal with that. And in 2021, there was an amendment. Just pulling it up here. Begging your indulgence.
I'm glad you can find it.
Yeah, it just had to do with the amount of the payments and the timeliness, but not anything to do with adding additional requirements. So
this actually brings up another issue, and I'll get to in a second, Anthony. We really are relying on the finance department to manage a whole plethora of sort of ad hoc, different kinds of lease agreements and other things. We did in the last budget create the Office of City Services. That's not the right name.
Central Services, sir.
Central Services. We put a lot of things. I can remember Ms. Dickinson also being in the thick of negotiating the public-private partnership for the Hillman Garage and the city dock. All these ad hoc things that get thrown at finance with all the other duties that they have. I think one of the things that we need to find out, and maybe you can opine, Ms. Dickinson, are these things that will be taken over by the Office of Central Services and managed by them so that it's not something one of your budget people has to keep following?
So most of them, no. I think that the Central Services Officer would track the rental and lease agreements that we have in place and be responsible for those types of agreements that deal with property, with city property. For instance, lease like the marketplace, and we do own a couple of other properties that we have lease agreements on. They may take over like tracking to see whether or not we're receiving that they're performing in accordance with the lease agreement. They would be involved in that, but they would have to check with us to see if we've received the payments, were they timely, etc. So we'd have to work together on that anyways. We did add a position to try to track some of these ad hoc agreements that you mentioned, and Kim assumed that position, but we haven't fully implemented her on that role yet because the new person that was supposed to start in August cannot come to work for us. So it's a vacancy still. So Kim is kind of wearing 2 hats now. So we haven't rolled her into that new role yet.
So we're opening up many cans of worms.
Yeah. So
But,
the Central Services Office would help in some aspects with the tracking of agreements on properties. The finance office would still be heavily involved. Vicky popped on, so she may have something to add there.
No, I was just
going
to.
Just one second. One of the problems with action minutes is it doesn't catch details like this. I would like to request that the action minutes flesh out the status of where we are with the Market House, including the fact that we've received payments in arrears. There was no penalty assessed because that's not in the contract agreement. we need to have some discussion about the what is it, the non-compliance with the statements that we're supposed to be receiving. I know, Jody, this is throwing more work on your staff, and that's why I was hoping central services could pick up some of this load. But it is appearing to me, and I'll get the sense of the committee. I'll go back to you, Victoria, but then Mr. Nobilio had his hand up. I want to get to him. I was cruising into this thinking that this was a closed matter. And it feels to me, by a show of hands from the committee, that this matter is not yet closed. Is that a sense of the committee at this point? I'm seeing hands on the fence. Jim has his yellow hand up, so let me let Vicky finish, and then I'll go to Anthony, and then Jim has his hand up.
No, I was just going to support Jody's statement that central services, there are some parts of that in terms of simply keeping track of the fact that we have those leases, when are they up, that kind of thing. But finance isn't going to be out of it.
All right. Well, Anthony, you had a comment to make.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Arnett. So with some of these red flags, we're seeing already late payments and so forth. It would seem to make sense that there's some kind of audit built into the performance revenue or ability or to audit, the results or the information that's being brought forward. Is there a reason why that was excluded? Was it a cost benefit, or I'm just curious why there might not be an ability to audit the reporting that's provided based on the performance rent? There could be other GL accounts that they're possibly hitting, revenue or dollars to. Not saying that that's the case, but with some of the red flags already, with the late payments, et cetera, is that a possibility, or was that considered?
I believe the lease agreement has a provision in there that we are welcome to go look at their records if we want to, but that is a cost for us. I don't know why they put a compilation report in the lease agreement, except for that it's the least costly report that an outside firm will do, because it requires less work. If we ask them to do a review, that's a limited review of the information. If we ask them to do a full audit, that's pretty strong evidence that the numbers have some basis behind them, but that's expensive for an organization like the marketplace to get a full audit. That's gonna be several $1,000s. So
understood. I was just curious, maybe there could be a targeted audit around the basically the revenue being submitted, right? So really, not a full scale audit, but just a revenue audit of sorts. So
right, and looking at what Jim was saying earlier about trying to reconcile it to tax returns, because I don't think it would, even if you had quarterly information, you'd probably have a reconciliation between the quarters on the tax return and what's showing on the financial statements. So what's showing in the system versus what they're reporting on the tax return. And maybe it's a simple process of just adding 4 numbers up, but we'd have to do a process there.
Yeah,
but in direct answer to your question, this committee does have a budget. If we want to have an external body come in to look at it, we would have to go find that body, give them direction, and have them execute whatever it is that we ask them to do. I'm not sure we're there at this point, but I guess I would leave it to a sense of the committee. I am disturbed that we're not getting the required annual reporting, and I take heed of the verbiage that you use, Finance Director, that you're not confident in what you're getting. If that is the case, it does seem to me that we do have as a committee, some due diligence to do at this point.
I wouldn't want to use the word confident. I haven't verified it. There's nothing I've verified. It's coming out of there. It's a printout from their accounting system, so it would be what's showing in their accounting system. but I have no way of validating it.
Well, I'm feeling like we've gone from something that I thought was a closed matter actually quite a while ago and just needed a report to something that has, as Anthony said, some red flags. What is the sense of the committee? What do we do at this point? Do we ask for some external review? Mr. Cardillo.
Thanks. I'll answer your last question first. I believe that we should let the finance department work through its, let them complete their work. And at the conclusion of that, a report back to the audit committee about this is what happened. What I had said a couple months ago about the topic was the function here, the audit committee should be to request what the process is for these ad hoc agreements, to have the process documented, and then the audit committee could review the process and determine if the process was appropriate to catch all the idiosyncrasies or components. And again, this is a multi-departmental issue with central services, finance, law. So it crosses multiple departments in terms of who's responsible for what piece of this total agreement. With regard to your point about the action minutes don't reflect it, you as the chair can state clearly that this is an action item that needs to be taken subsequent to the meeting. So,
but what I asked for was a more full than action minutes, something that is much more comprehensive, including the requests that you just made, because those things do not normally get caught in action minutes. And I've long had a problem with action minutes, with recognition that it falls on the staff to do them. But I think action minutes are why things like this slip through the cracks. And for this one, I am requesting that we have much more full documentation in the minutes of the red flags that have come up, the deficiencies in the reports that are being received, even discussion about the role of who's responsible for this, finance or the Office of Central Services. In other words, a much more full accounting of this particular topic. It is a still live fraud and abuse complaint. And at a minimum, this committee has to fully satisfy that we've either found or not found fraud or abuse. And every time we open it up, I think we find new things, and I don't have the sense that we're finished with this business. But I'll put that to a vote to the committee in a minute. But meanwhile, Alderwoman Pendle Charles has had her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things similar to what Mr. Cardillo has raised and suggested that possibly Ms. Dickinson and our assistant city manager could get together and let us know what they believe should be the next steps going forward. This is not my area of expertise, so maybe we look to those who do it every day and have done it for years to kind of give us some guidance, possibly also along with our city attorney to see what we can do. The other thing is, number 2, about the minutes, and that is, this is definitely not my expertise, and I'm going down a rabbit hole here. I've seen some minutes on one organization that I won't say frequent, but I attend their meetings. AI, I don't know how helpful that would be in capturing the minutes that you want, Mr. Chair. Like I said, now I'm going way down the rabbit hole. Something that's not my area, but I've seen some AI minutes that are pretty detailed. I see Mr. Nobilio is shaking his head. Boy, I'm on target this early in the morning. That's something odd. Thank you.
I don't know where do we have an AI contract even in the city. I do have a question you asked earlier we need to get back to, but I want to stay on this for a little bit longer, and I want to turn to the city attorney. we've really got a kind of a mixed bag of issues that are popping up here. Do you have any counsel for us on your sense of how we should proceed on this?
Well, I think the city can hire an external accounting firm to go in and to do the kind of review that you're asking for. The lease provides that we have an open book access to the market house. And really what we need is someone to go in over the last 3 years and determine what they brought in, what they paid out, and where all of the money is going, it has gone, and measure that against our requirements for payments into the city. But that again is a contract that has to be awarded, and there's a process for that takes time. But I don't see that this is very complicated, assuming that their books are in order. But I think that that's probably where this would go, because I know for a fact that the staff is extended beyond what would be expected of us legally, finance, and otherwise, with the way things are kind of managed in the current budget. But we could probably help with a contract of some kind. I've done these kinds of forensic analyses before. They've led this and know how to get it done. But we would probably need some kind of budget supplementation in order to bring in the right firm to do it and get it done and produce a credible report for you.
By code, this committee gets an annual budget. I don't remember, is it 50,000? I think it is. We donated it to the strategic plan and the citizen survey, but I assume that was monies of the past. I think we, in this fiscal year, should have some money available. But I would turn to the finance director. Hiring an external group is, for me, a fairly serious step. I'm sure it's something that will make its way into the press and so forth. Are we at the point where we need that, or is this something that can still be managed internally? I guess my bottom line is that somebody from outside going to be helpful to you or add more to your daily burdens? Well,
from a legal perspective, we'd be happy to do it. But you'd have to tell us, what do you want us to stop doing on the other side? Of the 100 things that we have that are all pressing right now. If you tell us to stop doing 10 things, we may have the time to do it. So, but it's managing the process would be simple enough, given the right statement of work, and a full-throated, statement from the audit committee about what you really want to see at the end of the forensic analysis. Should be easy enough. And then with us, finance and the audit committee, we should be able to check the work of the contractor to make sure it gets done. But you're looking at probably 3 to 6 months lead time just to award a contract, to put out a request for proposals, potentially, unless we know someone, but an RFP, and then getting that awarded, selecting the right forensic analysis firm, and then producing a report, say, over another 3 to 6 months.
Mr. Chair, I think Ms. Buckland could tell us how much is in that budget.
Pardon me?
Ms. Buckland, I think, was going to tell us what the budget was. Sorry.
Yeah, it's 25,000. It sits
That's what I
within
thought.
yeah.
All right. So, Ms. Dickinson, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think that a forensic audit for several years on the marketplace is going to be very expensive. I would suggest that we try something like what Jim was recommending earlier, like taking the annual tax returns and seeing if we can get those reconciled close to what they're saying their sales revenue was. And it's gross revenue too, so it's not too hard of I think that information would be on the tax return. So we could take that step first and see if it's close. I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money requiring an audit. And identify that it may be off by just a few $1,000s. It's just not worth what we're spending. The cost benefit's just not there. So that would be the first step I would suggest. I don't think that I guess, I mean, I don't sense anything intentional. It's just having to do that extra step of a compilation report when they're a calendar year business that's doing calendar year tax returns and trying to give us something as evidence of their revenue levels. But you never know until you take a closer look. And again, their tax returns won't include their tenants. Their tenant revenue is not going to be included on their own revenue counts.
So am I hearing that this is something that the finance will be doing?
That step that I just described, I'll be willing to undertake that. It is a bit of work, but that's what I would do first before
All right.
taking a drastic action like that. In the meantime, the committee might want to consider updating the agreement to stipulate some other kind of evidence to support the revenue that they're claiming.
Do we have the power to do that, Mr. City Attorney?
You do.
All right. So update the agreement. Okay.
Another
I want
hand.
to answer quickly a question that Rhonda put, Alderman Pendle Charles put out. I'm sorry, folks. I tend to like to use first names and be less formal, but as far as I know, we have no other pending fraud and abuse complaints. There was some saber rattling about something to do with things going on in the police department, but no complaint has been filed. So we are clear of any complaints. And now I do want to point out, and this is for Harry's edification, but it's a longstanding issue. There has, from inception, and I was co-author of the creation of this body along with then Alderman Lippman, discussion about what is exactly the role of this committee. Alderman Lippman felt that the role of this committee was to have a hand in hiring the external auditor and to meet 2 or 3 times a year to review the external audit. End of role. Others felt that this was a body that would get into the very issues we're getting into today. One is answering and getting into these fraud and abuse complaints, which is, you can see, can take on various forms and kind of different levels of what this committee can and should do to address it. Alderman Payon years ago added to this committee the function of reviewing or overseeing the performance measures. And I've kind of assumed that includes reviewing and being involved with developing the strategic plan, which in theory would be the umbrella. And in fact, money from this committee paid for the retreat we had on the strategic plan. But it may be time to put on the agenda for the next agenda a discussion of the role and function of this committee. And we may need to add another hour to the scheduled time, but we've been going on, I know, I'm sure Harry's eyes are opening too, Jim. But, and maybe that's something that I need to work with Mr. Lippman about, and maybe we can do a white paper. So it might not be for next meeting, but at some point we sort of are betwixt and between. We have a public that expects us to be performing a legitimate audit function, and they file complaints and they expect them to be carried out. Anthony mentioned seeing red flags. That's what we're here. If there's some red flags that need to be raised, we're the ones that do it. It's not going to be raised anywhere else in city functions. This is, as you can see, a combined aldermanic and citizen group. It is unique in that regard. It's unique in that regard in that it also has a budget. And in fact, I think it's because we're a combination of elected and civic people that we do have a budget, but we have a budget to carry out our mission. So I think that today's meeting has sort of shown a spotlight on what really is the expectation, what are the things that we're supposed to be doing. And we've been in existence now for quite a long time. I think it's not an inappropriate thing to take a step back and review what we're doing. I'll get to you in a second, Rhonda. In a sense, the Financial Advisory Commission is having similar kinds of thoughts, and there have been suggestions that this committee and the FAC be combined. An interesting thought, but nevertheless, not something that's been given any meat to the bones. So, Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Number one, just one small statement. When I was a prosecutor in Baltimore City, we were chastised repeatedly if we called anybody by their first name. So I can't get away from that habit. Anyway, maybe we should, history has a way of giving us our answers. Maybe we should take a look at historically, it might be 5 or 6 years since this committee's been in existence. What have we, what seems to have been the items that are front on our plates? What seems to be, have fallen off? And kind of do an assessment of how we've evolved. And that may give us an idea of how do we move forward. Because sometimes it's hard to remember how we started and what we started focusing on. And I think with the help of Ms. Dickinson, as well as our assistant city manager, Ms. Buckland, along with our city attorney, to kind of do a assessment of where we were, where we are, and where we could go with the limited resources that we have. I think that'll be determinative of how we move forward. There are some things we may want to do, but we may not be able to do them based on limited funds and limited resources as far as human resources are concerned. So we might want to kind of look at an analysis of, like I said, where we were, how we started, and integrate that into the code as to what our function is really supposed to be. And we might need some legislative changes.
So I think we've been in existence for at least 10 years. It's been 8 years since Mr. Littman was on the Honorable Littman was on the city council, and we formed the committee well before that. So, but we have conducted audits. We did an audit of the handling of cash in the Recs and Parks, and we have actually performed audits on various groups. They're not heavy lifts. They're not big duties like getting into opening up the books and things like that. It was more looking at processes to protect the handling of cash and so on. But given that we're at least 10 years old, it probably is worth doing some kind of a retrospective, looking at what we've done and what we ought to do. And so I don't think that's an unwarranted thing. But the very thing that we're looking at now, when we get a request to look at fraud and abuse, it turns out that is much deeper than it appeared at first. We did find that things were in arrears. We found that we're still not getting some reporting, and at a minimum, before we can close that actual filed request or pointing out of fraud and abuse, which I think has some other aspects to it that we haven't talked about that are more political, but nevertheless, it is a legitimate complaint and it needs a legitimate, fulsome response from this body. And it's my sense that we've not completed that work. Any other on this topic? Soon they're going to start grading my street. We only have 5 minutes left. The new business item is a report from the finance director. Do you have an update for us, Ms. Dickinson?
No, just to tell you that we are closing the FY24 general ledger, and the audit team will start some of their procedures later in October once we've got some of our financial statements put together. We've also asked them this year to help us pull the big report together, actually physically helping us with some of the work, the lift of pulling that report together. If any of you have looked at it, it's got many, many sections and components, and just the task of the word, we used to call a word processing task of pulling that together, but pulling that PDF together with all of its components and making sure they tie and agree and everything reconciles. That's quite a task. So we're going to pull the financial statements together and give them a footnote information, and they're going to do the legwork on pulling the report together. So hopefully that'll help us from a timing perspective this year. The only other thing that I'd say is that, as you said, I've got 3 vacancies. We're still trying to fill. You get to the point where you think you're almost there, and then if someone pulls out and you've got another, I still have a senior accountant, a budget analyst, and we have a cashier position open too.
And as you say, we have some of your staff, and we always need to remember to thank Kim for managing this body and doing the minutes and keeping me on track, which is pretty much a full-time job. So Kim, as always, we thank you for keeping this body up and running. Yes, a little round of applause is well due. Did we increase the pay, the amount of money that we're paying the external auditor?
Yes, we did. I see Mr. Cardillo has his hand up, so that may be what he wants to talk about. We are paying them extra, plus the contract levels were increased a bit.
Mr. Cardillo.
No, first, I just wanted to say thank you to Jody for negotiating that additional work with UHY, and I'm glad that you guys came to an agreement on the revision. And then a question: do you believe that the issue with market house rent is going to become a point for the audit? I don't know if it rises to the level of them noting it or mentioning it, because I think then we would need a response from the finance department to say, oh, yes, we agree, and this is the corrective action.
If that is directed to me, I don't believe.
No, it's directed to the finance director.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that would rise to the level that would get their attention. I think as far as revenue is concerned, I don't think it's a material part of our revenue flow. So if they ever tried to sometimes they implement special audit procedures on an annual basis, just as kind of like a surprise thing. They'll add a step and do something different. If they picked up on some of the contracts that we have and tested those for compliance, they might note a finding that we would have to reply to. I'd be glad to send out the schedule that I update that shows what all their rent has been for the last, through COVID, through the special arrangements from the start. And I did distribute that to the council a year or so ago when we were trying to get all caught up. But this last year, when he came in June to get ready to pay us the rest of it for 24, I updated that schedule. So I'd be glad to send that to you to show you just the levels of funding we're talking about, the levels of revenue.
No, I was just wondering if this issue is going to be, if they're going to note it as part of their procedures. I don't need that detail. That can go to you and the finance department. I don't just, again, it's more that the audit committee is apprised of the situation and is informed that there's a corrective path forward.
If there's an update of that, I would like to see that. And I think Harry needs to see it to be brought up to speed. If that's just an update sharing with council members, that's fine, but I'm not sure it hurts to share it with the audit committee writ large. All right. If there's nothing else for the agenda is completed, if there's nothing else for the order of the good, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.